Hey, what's up, guys? So, is DC dead? Oh no! Ah! Okay, all seriousness, joking aside, flat out, I don't care. I don't care anymore. I don't care. So, is DC Comics dead, or is it dying? What's happening to it? You know, like our beloved characters, Superman, Batman, and all the myriad of other characters that we love and adore, that we grew up from as kids, that we had ability to that this took us, like comic books took us out of whatever we were experiencing in our world at that point in time in our young life, and then be able to experience and see things and read things in an entirely different way. You know, I think it's interesting that, you know, you have Didio, I don't know, some guy. Now here's the thing, you know, the guy recently lost his job. It's hard, terrible. I've lost my job before. It's not fun. So I don't intend, this is not the intent to be able to poke fun of a guy that just lost his job. But here's the thing, and I think it's really interesting what he pointed out. And I'll post the video of what he was talking about, I guess in last July 2019 at San Diego Comic-Con. I'll post that video so you can see the full context and get sort of like, leave aside my opinion or whatever's going on with the comic books industry, because I want you guys to have your own opinion, have your own beliefs, have your own ideas. I think it's so important that we do that and not just sort of adhere to the Borg ideas of what we all should be in terms of our lives are different. We all have different fingerprints, different eyes. We're different people, and that's important to celebrate, but not at the expense of the Borg. All right. Well, in any way, I'm going to get to what he talked about. One of the things that he talked about in that interview right at the very beginning, I thought it really captured the overall atmosphere of the entire interview itself, was that nostalgia is the problem, but that comic books was the counterculture, the counter sort of idea of what creating and implementing stories and ideas was all about. And that nostalgia, in terms of where we are now, is what he was saying, that nostalgia has become sort of the pulp culture, and that pulp culture it's come so mainstream that it's the driving force behind all fans. In other words, fans are just steeped in nostalgia. They're over steeped in this whole bit of nostalgia, and that it's no longer the counterculture, and that's the problem. Now, that's my opinion of what I heard and what I was understanding him to say. But I think it's really important that it points out a myriad of issues going on. Now, before we get to that, I wanted to talk about one thing, is that I'm kind of in the lieu of counterculture, of what is counterculture, what is not. Well, I'm launching this comic book called The Last Colony. And essentially what this story is about what distance would we go for the loved ones we have in our lives? How far would we go to provide for them, save them, whatever it took, all that. And so this story goes in line with that kind of idea, dealing with this sort of post-apocalyptic America. God forbid we ever start facing that in real life. And this is not intended to be sort of the moment where all these sort of crazy things, if you're watching other news and that sort of thing is going on. And it just kind of stops here for a moment. But in any case, that was never the intent. This book I was developing this 2 years ago. It just based upon where I was at in my life, and here I am. This is the moment where it worked out in my life to be able to push this out. It's weird how these sort of massive I don't even know how to. I'm losing my words because of just the gravity and how huge these situations are that we live in real life going on in people's lives right now, like in the West Coast or in China and so on and so forth, with South Korea, Italy right now, Iran. My goodness, this is crazy. It never was intended. This book was never intended. So I want to say that up front. But at the same time, at what distance would we go for those that we love around us? And that's really the point of this story. So if that intrigues you, I really would just encourage you to sign up for that, put your name in their email address, and then subscribe. And that gives me kind of an opportunity when we go ahead and start launching this in spring, late spring, God willing, that we have a kind of a base to start this crowdfunding. I want to come back to crowdfunding here in a second because I have a totally other way in terms of looking at this. And where's comics? Where's DC? Is DC dead? Our favorite comic book characters. I mean, Batman, man, what a Goliath. Superman, even so. And all these other characters that I'm not mentioning. Wonder Woman, she has a movie coming out. And I think her movie, God willing, we're all still here, but her movie is that I think that one's going to actually do quite well. There's some reasons why, but we're going to come to that hopefully in this video. But the other part of it is that this article from The Guardian, and I think it's so interesting. Why are comic book shops closing as superheroes make mint? And this sort of it's interesting because the Didio guy, I don't think these execs quite get it. They've lost touch with their fans, completely lost touch with their fans. Not only have lost touch with their fans, but they've also lost touch with typical story arcs, and they've fallen in this trap of let's just produce SJW stuff, and SJW is the counterculture. While at the same time they say they're very inclusive and diversity minded, but if you have a different opinion, then you're suddenly a bigot? This is insane. And I think that really gets to the heart of really the overall problem of why comic shops are closing and superheroes are making mint. But here's the thing. A lot of comic books, there's my local comic book shop. They have a game shop attached to it. And honestly, you see the game side of it, and they're doing great. In the comic book side, it's just rather sad to see. And the Guardian's opinion is that they're making this mint because, well, I'm going to pause there for a second, and I'll tell you exactly why comic book stores are dying. Diamond Comics distributors. I think that's exactly it. The market has become so saturated with four top figures, that these top figures right here, DC, Dark Horse, Image, and Marvel, that's the only place where you're going to get comics. Utter insane. That could be no further. That's absolutely untrue. There are so many excellent comic book characters, not only characters, but artists out there that have left this sort of dichotomy and gone off and done their own things and been far more successful and far more happy, less stressed in their lives about fitting in a certain box in terms of where your opinion is. Your opinion has to exist in this safe space. If it doesn't exist in this safe space, well, then I guess you must be a bigot. You must be extremely racist. That is ridiculous. I think the big thing is we're after stories that have meaning and purpose, not stories that's backed up by just, Diamond Distributing. How this works and how Marvel and DC constantly end up at the top is they oversend the amount of comic books that a comic book store bought. So in other words, what happens is because they oversent, like let's say the comic book store bought 20 copies. Well, they then sent them 50 copies. Well, by sending them more copies, they're then able to say, well, these type of stories and so on and so forth are going to be at the top. Now, I looked last week, and one thing's interesting about that is that Wonder Woman was at the top. And I do think there's a bit of a marketing connection with Wonder Woman and the Wonder Woman movie. Not to say that Wonder Woman in that movie, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing that, hopefully. Now, the last Wonder Woman movie, it was fantastic. It was fun. It was cool to see a character that was empowered by her beliefs and who she was and how she struggled to find that identity in terms of who she was and what she could do, not only in the world where she came from, but in the world where she was going to exist. Those are relatable ideas in terms of putting forth the story. But one thing that I thought was really interesting from the Guardian, this is from the Guardian article, is that superheroes have never been more in the public eye, but people don't come out of the cinema after watching the latest Marvel movie and heading to the comic shop. They'll go online and buy a graphic novel at prices that shops can't compete with. We'll get to that. And then I think that in the future, the industry will move away completely from monthly comics and just produce graphic novels. But given that the monthly comic market is so important to the survival of the physical retailers, it's worrying. Okay, there's a lot there to break down. First and foremost, you're talking to a completely different market. Most people that are going to movies, quite a few of them actually don't pick up on the actual bit that they don't pick up on actual comics at all. Most of them just like going to good movies. And so that's a completely different market. The second thing is just going online. Again, I think the biggest thing is the direct contact with actual artists. It's so key that we as creators have a direct contact with actual artists. And that is so important. And I think we're losing that. That's why, from a corporate standpoint, yeah, DC and Marvel, you're going to buy your DC and stuff and Marvel online. You're not going to go after the physical copy that you want to have. You're not going to go after the physical copy unless you have a direct relationship with the creator. And you find out, well, the creator's cool to hang out with, or he's a total jerk, or she's a total amazing person, or she's a total jerk. You're going to miss that. And so that's where I completely agree with this. Just got back from my El Valentin machismo out of my outfit again and back into I changed clothes. It's kind of weird. But anyway, the other part of this I think is really important to talk about is that comic sales are down as readers abandon print. Again, I know this article is from about 2 years ago, July 18th, 2018. But I think it's interesting to point out this article from TechCrunch, just how much things have changed in that, in around this time, comic books were starting to be crowdfunded. I mean, a long time ago when, Indiegogo or Kickstarter and all that sort of stuff. And it's been going a long time. But I think there's been a key couple of artists that have sort of flipped the bridge in terms of leaving kind of the mainstream comic book creators, publishers, and those sort of things, and going into the independent and making, doing YouTube videos and really connecting the artists connecting directly with their readers, their readership, their fans, those that are wanting to eat up their information in a direct connection. I think that's the part about Diamond Distributing is there's that middle person that really honestly doesn't need to be there, that has really allowed certain companies, be it Marvel, DC, etc., to be able to push themselves up to the top and in a very dishonest way, as I described as I just described, but do it in a way that really leaves out the fan. And then when they come back and they say, well, it's nostalgia's the issue, and that's why comic books well, wait a minute, if nostalgia is the issue, then why are comic book sales going down and readerships abandoning print? Nostalgia is all about having the physical copy in your hands. What do you mean by nostalgia? I think that's important to point out, that in this sort of context where you have through these crowdfunding experiences, you have a way to directly connect with your readers. And I think that whole part about this culture, or being this counterculture sort of thing, really, it wasn't that at all, because it's interesting when you look at graphic novels, and I think that goes back to Wood's point, is that was correct, I thought, was that kids, I see more than anything else, they're reading graphic novels. They're reading these full books and not necessarily going for the floppies. And I think there might be a distinction there. But I also think that there's a way that, yes, floppies could be important Again, based upon the relationship that is set up with the creator, with the fans. That's something that's terribly been missed. And that's the key. It has to do with the type of stories being told, the type of stories being told to the market. And it's not reaching that market. And then you have bumbling disasters like Game of Thrones, Star Wars. Well, I don't even know what's going to happen with Lord of the Rings. Good God willing, that won't be the case. But even if that does, I think that brings up the last point. And this is more or less, I think, up for debate. And I would love to hear everyone else's opinions, because in other videos and other memes and those sort of things. But one opinion is that I have is that, you know what? Superman's awesome. Batman's awesome. You know, the debate in our household, who's better, Superman or Batman? It's fun because we look back at those times of where we were in that point in time in history. Wonder Woman, all those sort of things. But then Star Wars, Luke Skywalker, he grew up and got old. Han Solo, what a curmudgeon. Goodness gracious. And we've gone to the point where we look back and we're trying to bring them back in terms of where we are at this point in time. Now, part of that comes from having an established canon and following that established canon, and the canon that was successful. Obviously, that's been diverted by the current, as they call themselves, the counterculture. Well, really, we know that the mainstream media has sort of gone in this sort of line of telling us what we need to be. They are telling us that what we think should be important in our lives. Nothing could be further from the truth, because the fans, us, we're the ones digesting this information. We're the ones picking it up. We're the ones going and looking at this new Star Wars movie and going, I'm not going to watch that, especially after going through and spending time on watching Game of Thrones, which was cool at the time. When I was watching it, it's like, oh, this is a really cool new season just this last year. And I'm like, wait a minute. As the season went along, it was like, oh, we're missing out. What is happening? And of course, then you go along and here we are, Doctor Who, Star Trek, so on and so forth. I mean, all these elements are just falling apart. So I think the thing that's really important to point out here is the importance that, these characters are really important to us and they helped us get it to this point. But I think more than anything else, that's why independent creators, us making our new superheroes, us, the fans, making our new universes, our new adventures. And that's the cool thing. We get to do that, and we get to do it in a way that's unique and right. That's right for the direct connection with the creator and the fan. We have that opportunity. That's cool. And I think more than anything, DC and Marvel, let them die. Fine, I don't care, because that leaves a window for people like me, people like you out there that are comic book creators, that are fans. We have an opportunity to choose exactly the type of content we want to digest. If you like this content, subscribe, all that sort of good stuff. Check out my Les Colony. I'll leave the link below. Have a great week, and we'll see you later on next Taco Tuesday.
TikvahMinds.com